In this video, I'm going to talk to you about how the basic skills alone won't make you a better photographer. I'm going to go over what the basic principles and understandings of photography are, how they're important, and then offer solutions of how you can improve from going a good photographer with the basic understanding to develop to be yourself a great photographer. Now, if you were to consider the core principles of photography, you'd first need to identify the technical aspects of photography, so to how to work your camera. So initially you're talking about the relationship between the ISO, shutter speed and aperture. Then there's the aesthetic details such as use of lighting, good composition and effective framing. Now, while I'm not suggesting both of those are easy to master and they will take you several times in practice to get a grip of them, but with the proper application and with the proper amount of dedication on your part, they are things that can be understood. But this core skill set alone, does that make you a good photographer? Does having an understanding of how to set up a good photo or spot a good photo opportunity make you a great photographer? Or even a good one at that? Well, unfortunately the answer is no. Having the basic understanding of photography is more a foundation to build upon to develop your skill set further down the line. So that's why in this video I'm going to talk about why skill alone won't make you a better photographer, and I'm going to offer 5 ways in which you can improve your photography. The first one is strategy. Now, you might be questioning initially what strategy got to do with developing a photography skill set. I'll explain how that is. To develop a strategy as a photographer, this is where you need to start acting with a lot more intention on your part. You need to start actually dedicating time purposefully and intentionally again to go out there and take photos. This strategy can include a plan of action of where, when and how you're going to take photos. So that could be what location, time of day, and maybe even what kind of a type of lens you're going to use. The most obvious one, of course, is if you're someone like me who works a full-time job during the week, you could go out with your camera on the weekend. If you look ahead and you see the weather looks good for photo opportunities, then that's where you can set up dedicated time to go out there with your camera and try to take photos. A key part of this strategy and this plan of action is to think back to yourself, right, when you were out there on days when maybe you didn't have your camera and you were walking around in your area, think to yourself, what looked quite good at what time of day? So for example, if you're walking down a certain street, like in the city or in your area, wherever it is, if you're walking down a certain street and you think, actually, when I walked down there at this particular time of day, the light was actually very good and very good for photo opportunities. And if you're setting out to go out there with your camera and you notice that the lighting conditions look similar to those days when you didn't have your camera, that's when you can think to yourself, you're going to go back to those same locations, but this time you'll have your camera on you and you can actually take good photos. You see, by developing this strategy to go out there and take photos, you're also indulging in the process and enjoying it a lot more because you're being a lot more intentional with your photography and you're going out there and taking the photos that interest you the most, and it's the photos that you want to make as a photographer. This allows you to shoot with a lot more intention and a lot more authenticity because, again, it's coming back to, it's helping you create the photos and style of photography that's true to you and is what you want to make. The next one is you need to develop a vision. Now, it's one thing alone to be able to take aesthetically pleasing photos, but it's a whole other ballgame to try and develop a vision and tell a kind of story through your photography. Now, there's a couple of examples we could use for this point. So if we look at someone like Saul Leiter, he was more like to utilise a more abstract style of photography and tend to incorporate more colour into his style of photos, which back then in the 1960s was absolutely unheard of and was pioneering at the time to develop that kind of style of photography, because back then it was all black and white. Other aspects of his work were a use of strong composition to really draw in the attention of his subjects through effective use of framing. You see, this kind of use of framing and the kind of more abstract style of photos was really his kind of style of vision. That's the kind of thing where you could look at and think, that's a Saul Leiter photo, that's kind of what he would take in his kind of style of photography. Another example of this, and one of my favourite photographers, was Fan Ho. He would utilise a kind of more geometric style of composition and also through effective use of light and shadows. And he was also more less to focus on the finer details and more of the big picture to give that authentic, gritty look of mid-century Hong Kong. Those are just two examples of two photographers who, once they developed the skill set, the basic understandings of what made a photo, they then developed their own style and their own taste, and they put their own vision into their photography. They kind of started to go down a rabbit hole, as if you want to call it that, or tunnel vision, maybe a better word for it, into what it was that really enticed them about photography and being creative. Now, what I will say about developing a vision is that this is not something that can be achieved quickly. This is not a quick success. Developing a vision can only really take part or take place once you have understood and mastered the basics of a photo. So you know how to set up a camera correctly in terms of the proper light exposure. You know how to understand good composition. That's the foundation of it. Once you've done that, you then have to then kind of put in a lot more commitment and dedication as a photographer to go out there and really search for it and ask yourself, what is it that I love about photography? What interests me? What is it I want to do that is slightly inspired by other photographers, but is kind of in a way my own take of photography? Next, we have right place, right time. Now, this is a frustrating one for street photographers, because if you look online, if you look out there at other people's work, you might see your favourite photographer is posting great photos and amazing photography, and you think, man, how much level of skill and ability must that take for them to achieve that? And you might start to even think to yourself, that's something that only they could do. Only they could take such a great looking photo. Now, I will never deny it takes a high degree of skill and talent and understanding to be able to take a great photo. But if we actually take a step back and ask ourselves, how much of that photo was actually based upon the fact that that photographer just so happened to be in the right place at the right time? And in order to kind of demonstrate this point, I'll use one of my own photos, which I'll put on the screen now. You can see this photo I've shared many times. This is part of what I would say, going back to the previous point, my vision. This is kind of my vision of photography, where I like to isolate my subjects and put them into a big kind of atmosphere to kind of contrast the scale of the man-made environment versus the kind of more smaller human being. What I love about this photo also is not necessarily just the composition of it, it's more the colour aspect of it as well. I love the kind of moody, gritty buildings in the background, very kind of Glasgow-esque, where you have this kind of big, dark, moody city, contrasted by the brighter colours of the woman going through the photo. Then you have the umbrella, which blocks out the subject's face, adds that bit of mystery to the photo. And then of course the umbrella itself is tartan coloured, which tartan just makes any photo great in my opinion. But I also cannot argue about the fact that if I was so much as 5 seconds early or 5 seconds late to that scene or to that street in particular, I would never been able to take that photo. I would have missed that opportunity to see that person walking through the shot, and I never would have been able to take it. That photo, I would say, is up to, I'd say, between 80 to 90% of just me being in the right place at the right time. So when you see a lot of your favourite photographers who are posting these great photos, just keep in mind that there is an element of luck involved. Now, what I will say, and I will deconstruct the word luck, to not kind of suggest that it means that, oh, anybody could have took that photo. I believe that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So anybody could have been presented with that opportunity to take that photo, but if you don't understand how to take a picture, if you don't understand good composition, well then that opportunity is wasted on you. So that's where I would say, yes, there's an element of luck, but there's also a bit of skill involved in there too. So I don't think having just right place, right time is just completely overriding all ability of any photographer. Now, the point I'm trying to make here with this is that in order for you to get out there and take good photos, or for you to have the chance to take the photos you want to make, you have to really put yourself out there and be committed to being out there with your camera. It's kind of like playing the lottery. If you want to win the lottery, you have to be in it to win it. You'll never win the lottery if you don't play the game. Same way, if you want to actually take great photos, you have to actually put yourself in the situations where you are going to be able to take a great photo and the photos that you want to make. But also in the same sense of when you're trying to win the lottery, I would say maybe 8 or 9 times out of 10 you're going to fail, but then in that one occasion you will succeed and you will get that photo. So yes, that is the frustrating part, that you're not going to get as many great photos as you want, But as long as you're actually making that commitment to be out there with your camera, then that's going to give you the chance to take those photos and to be, again, in the right place in the right time. Sticking with the word commitment, the next point is commitment through improvement. Now, this is where focus is more on the mindset and the discipline on your behalf as a photographer. And that if you have developed the basic skill level and you can start to see that your body of work in your photography and maybe even the quality of your photos, for lack of a better word, is starting to plateau and starting to stagnate, this is where you need to put in the extra graft and go that extra mile. A large part of this improvement process involves things like lifestyle changes. So to track back to the earlier point where we talked about having dedicated days where you go out with your camera, try to make it a more regular occurrence. So instead of maybe thinking, right, I'll go out and shoot just when the light is good, try to be more intentional, be more regular with it. So just take your camera at any possible chance you have. So it couldn't just be on the weekends, even if you have a chance like where you're going to work and you think to yourself, I might have the chance to take a good photo. Try to incorporate changes such as that and to be more committed to photography. And now if you're not a regular shooter or you're not as regular at photography as you'd like to be, it will come across and might feel a bit strange to have your camera on you a lot more and a lot more regularly. But what you need to understand here, what you're doing is by having your camera on you and ready to take photos, you're building up more of a routine and you're building up more consistency. And much like anything in life or any aspect you want to get good at, not just photography, improvement comes through routine and consistency, and by having your camera on you and being more focused on taking photos, then you will improve over time. Now to track back again to the earlier point I made here, this is where it more focuses on you as the photographer, when you can feel yourself, right, do you want to go beyond just the basic skill level and create good photos? Do you want to actually achieve better than just the absolute foundation of what is photography? Do you actually want to achieve more? So if you're serious about that, this is where you need to show that kind of commitment. You need to show that kind of level of dedication that you want to get better. Now, just to finish off this point, and what I will say to keep in mind here is that it's not just enough to go out there with your camera singularly. This is where, I'll track back to the word I used at the beginning of this video, this is where you have to act with more intention. You have to be intentional out there to go out and think to yourself, right, I'm out here because I want to take photos. You want to kind of create the photos that you want to make. So if you were someone who, maybe like I mentioned earlier with Saul Leiter, you want to focus on more abstract photography, you need to start putting yourself in the positions where you can create that style of photos. You can't just go out there and aimlessly wander around and expect it to kind of come to you. You have to kind of actually be more intentional and look for aspects like that. Of course, I don't argue, right place, right time is a huge aspect of photography, but I think so much of it comes down to you have to act with more purpose in your photography. You think to yourself, what interests me? What is it I want to get better at? And you have to kind of go out there and kind of look for those kind of photo opportunities in order to add to that improvement, other than just the basics of photography. And the last point here is observation. Now you might think this is a little bit obvious, because you might think to yourself, well, if I'm out there with my camera and I spot photos I want to take, and I take the photo by looking through my camera and capturing that moment, then obviously I must be observing, right? Well, not entirely. Let me explain why. You see, to observe something objectively, you're experiencing a moment through all senses. So that's through things like sight, sound, smell, taste, even depending on where you're at. Whereas if you're capturing a photo, this is predominantly just through sight. This is just through vision, where you're capturing a moment. That's more of kind of a subjective kind of approach. Observation tends to be a more kind of unbiased kind of process and experience, where you're just being out there in an area and you're just experiencing a location as it is through all kinds of senses. Whereas photography can, yes, to an extent contain an element of observation through kind of authenticity, but photography so much is where you as a photographer are purposely capturing a photo in a moment in a certain composition to maybe draw attention to something or to highlight an aspect of it, where you've kind of spotted something that you kind of want to manipulate. So where observation is more objective, photography is more kind of subjective. So there's a big difference between the two of them. Now, to put observation into your practice, this is where I would recommend that once you get to a location of where you feel like you can take good photos, I would take maybe 10 to 15 minutes where you just wander around the area without taking any photos at all and just really notice what is going on in the area. I would particularly recommend you do this without listening to music, because I think to truly observe a moment is, as I said earlier, to experience it through all senses, and that includes through the sense of sound, because you really want to get a feeling of what actually makes this area so special. Is it the sounds? Is it the sights? Is it the noise? Is it the smells? Is it the taste of the region? This is what the things you're trying to convey through your photos, and to truly do so, you have to observe objectively what makes that area so unique. An example of this was last year when I was in Marrakesh. The souks region of that is definitely an assault on all your senses. It's a loud, busy, bustling area with a lot to take in. So what I tried to do was to kind of just wander around the area just for a few minutes to get a sense of what it was like, to sense what made this area so special. And I thought, right, well, if it's things like the sense of taste and smell of the area, that's where it's like through the scents and powders and the kind of spices that make up the area, through all the kind of like crafters there. Try to capture that through my photos. You see, by observing this area, it will not only give you a better understanding of what you are photographing to begin with, it will also make your photos add more authenticity to them, because you're capturing that area in its truest form, and that will really show through your photos, where you've captured something very authentic and very realistic to that area, and not just something that is just an eye-catching composition, which of course observation could be that, but it isn't just that alone. It's about showing something in its truest form. So there we have 5 methods to improve your ability as a photographer beyond just the basic skill set. As I said at the start, to understand the basics of photography is so important and is absolutely vital to any photographer, be it how serious you want to take photography. But it isn't the start and end point. There's so much more you can do to develop yourself as a photographer. But as always, I hope you found the video helpful. If there's any here that resonated with you the most, let me know. If there's anything I've missed, again, let me know and I might do a follow-up video. But as always, thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch up again soon.